textile industry was once Nigeria's largest employer, second only to the government, and a major player in the manufacturing sector.
You're right, Yere. Unfortunately, factors like inadequate power supply, smuggling of imported textiles, and insecurity led to a decline in the sector.
Indeed, the number of textile mills has decreased significantly, and the sector's contribution to employment and foreign exchange has dwindled.
Similarly, in cotton, Nigeria has a potential for local cotton production. Challenges remain in securing a consistent supply of high-quality raw materials.
However, efforts are being made to revive the industry through government initiatives like loan programs and import duty exemptions.
Yere, developing a strong local supply chain for cotton and other raw materials is crucial for the sector's revival and growth.
Indeed, Demola. Now, the Nigerian government has implemented initiatives to revive the textile sector, including a 100 billion naira loan facility through the Bank of Industry.
You're right, Yere. And in addition to import duty exemption, certificates are being issued to promote the import of machinery, spare parts, and textile adjustment tax levy being implemented with a percentage remitted to the Bank of Industry for the sector use.
Experts suggest that a focus on quality and sustainable practices is needed for Nigeria's textile industry to become a major player in the global market. And so today on Good Morning Nigeria, we shall focus on reviving cotton, textile and garment industry. Welcome to the program. I'm Ian Ray John.
And I'm Adimola Adeoye. Thanks for joining us for this morning. We are reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We already have seated in the studio for our conversation on reviving cotton, textile and garment industry. We have Dr. Kingsley Uzoma, SSA to the President on Agribusiness and Productivity Enhancement. Good morning, Dr. Uzoma.
Good morning.
Welcome. Good to see you again. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Also, in the studio, we have the Are Agbegba Aje of Iwoye Ketu Land, Ogun State, and President, National Cotton Association of Nigeria, in the person. Sorry, I think let me get the name correctly now. Yeah, in the person of Chief Anibe Achimugo, PhD. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.
All right, also joining us for the conversation, but this time around from our Kano studio is Saidu Datijo Adama, Chairman Adama Textiles and Garment Industry. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Adama. Let's just stay with you there because we know that before 1997, Nigeria had the second largest textile industry in Africa with over 250 active factories, most of them in Lagos and also in the north, like Kano, Kaduna, and others. So actually, we just want to find out from you, what went wrong? What were the major challenges? How did we find ourselves at the state that we are right now?
Once again, good morning, Nigerians. And good morning, Honorable Senior Special Assistant, Dr. Uzoma. Happy meeting you again. And my respected son, Chief Amebe. To answer your question, I would want to say that the position we are today, or the sector is today, is still pitiful. But I have to start by appreciating the efforts of the past leaders of this country. Textile and garment, or CTG, cotton, textile and garments subsector of the economy, has suffered a lot more than people thought. And President Olusegun Obasanjo has started to revive the cotton, textile, and garment. He was not able to conclude. There came President Eradua. He also put his hand there. President Jonathan also did a good job. President Muhammad Buhari did a good job. It didn't fail. All their efforts, I don't believe it is correct to say it is a failure. The present situation we are now is that we are at the teething period of concluding the job of the previous leaders. What we hope to see now is the concluding part by Mr. President of today, Chief Alhaji Ahmed Bola Tinubu, GCFR. We are almost ready to see the conclusion. We are happy that they have started part of it by training people in various sectors, particularly the textile and garment. I have to confess that Adama Innovation Enterprises Institute, a subsidiary of Adama Textile and Garment Industry, a registered institute with National Board for Technical Education, is a beneficiary of the training program just concluded this December last year. So the position now is to see whether our prayer and advocacy will get the blessings of Mr. President. And I believe with the effort the Senior Special Assistant is doing since the last time we had similar discussion, I appreciate him so much that today we are talking of something else, a step forward from where we were. My presentation here is that the 70 billion naira inherited by Mr. President Muhammad Buhari from the fund they called at that time Textile Development Fund, which was established shortly after the lifting of ban on textiles. It was designed to cushion the negative effect of the importation. It was not designed, to the best of our knowledge, to be a loan. It was supposed to be a grant to cushion the effect of the textile sector. Now, the situation is that a lot of burden is on the textiles. And there is a lot of hope by government that we will continue to create employment to Nigerians. What we hope to see now is Mr. President will use that fund. I don't know how much is now there. We expect it to be about 1 trillion naira saving since that time, because 70 billion naira was as at 10 years ago, and today we don't know what it is. If the money is still there, we pray, we hope, we lobby that the money will be floated into textile, cotton, and garment, and clear the debt of all the textile mills so that they will start from a clean slate. The situation now is starting from a clean slate and holistic, as well as a situation whereby Nigerians will know that these textiles mills are now revived to start from a clean slate, and with a condition that any beneficiary of such benefit will certainly employ number of X number of youth in this country will certainly use certain percentage, X percentage of locally sourced raw material, and efforts will be made to see that some cushioning effect is also given, or local governments that owns markets, government designate certain markets in the country that are supposed to be markets that will sell foreign and locally made textile mills. The way they call liberalization of trade in those days need to be revisited. We have to find out and know whether that position was endless or there was time limit. Government should please, for God's sake, find out the WTO agreement or whatever. Is it forever, or we have the time or the chance, government has the right to look into it? Who benefits that lifting of ban on textiles? Is it the foreign manufacturers of textile or Nigerians that benefit? Surely it's clear that that lifting of ban is benefiting foreigners. $6 billion worth of imports is a great threat to the economy. 10% of that amount is expected to be the revenue driven by the federal government, which is supposed to be injected into the system. That is the cotton, textile, especially textile and garment, as at that time, before the time we were opportuned to sit down and reframe the policy on textile. President Obasanjo needs to be commended because he gave us every listening ear. Though it took him time, he assigned his special assistant to go around all the industries in Nigeria. He visited all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adama. Thank you so much for your opening comments. Indeed, you have, said so much. And of course, we'll get back to you, to make more comments. And of course, much later in the conversation, you give your recommendations. But, one statement that you made, you said that previous efforts, to revive the CTG, talking about the cotton, textile and garment industry in Nigeria, didn't fail. And my question would be, if it didn't fail, why did we surge from over 182 billion in imports of, clothing materials to over 377. So I'm thinking this huge gap. I mean, we import more these days. So if these efforts didn't fail, so why the increase in the importation of clothing materials in the country? And I'd like to get to you, Dr. Achimogu. Share with us, what really are the concerns? Why is this sector not booming as it should?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Good morning, Nigeria. I think that the textile sector, CTG sector, is actually a complex one, and it's a sector that has so much benefit, but at the same time needs to be midwifed properly, and there must be sustainability in every intervention. And I do recall that some of the interventions never really were sustained. Where you are, and if you don't approach the interventions in the CTG sector, value chain approach, if you don't take the value chain approach, then definitely you'll not achieve results. So where you are taking care of farmers and you forget about the genius, or you are taking care of the genius, you forget about the textile people or the garments, then you don't have synergy. And I remember in 2019, it was the first intervention that I recall that was a value chain intervention, where the farmers were gathered and the genius were gathered and so on. And we had even ended up signing a memorandum of understanding with, the Uniform Services of Nigeria, meaning that they were encouraged to source their uniform fabrics from locally made fabrics, through. And that wasn't also sustained. It was only a one-year intervention, to be honest. when you look at it based on seasons. So I think that Alhaji Adama, my father, mentioned the fact that WTO. Now WTO, when we signed up, I think we just basically just allowed, the rules, of the WTO to weigh down on us, not thinking that we ought to also be deliberate about protecting our own industries. So you have smuggling that is a major concern, and the fact that the factors of production also, Nigeria uniquely, are also very high and very competitive. So when you talk about power, for instance, we all know the challenges with power, and without sustained power, you'd have problems in production. Also, most of the inputs that we require, either from farming or from the textile usage, are all imported. So you have that issue of FX, fluctuation, access to it, and so on and so forth. So I believe that those are the factors, when you put them together, that has caused the sector not to. And we think that maybe we have done so much intervention. We thank government, whether it's President Obasanjo or the current administration that is looking into the CTG sector. They've identified that it's a very important sector. I always say that it should even be classified as a national asset because of the job creation potentials, the wealth creation potentials of it. And in fact, when we talk about teaming youths, if you can engage them in the CTG value chain, which is very wide, there's no aspect of cotton that is wasted. For instance, if you produce 1 ton of cotton, that is all year round employment for 6 persons. So if you ramp it up to 1 million, we're talking 6 million. That's only cotton production. So I think that we're on the right track in the sense that, I always say that if you have a problem, the first way of dealing with your problem is identifying that you have a problem in the first instance. And I think government has done that. Even the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment recently called us, to have a brainstorm about the challenges in the sector and all that. They will remain. But the point is that how do we reduce it? Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We must continue to knock on the door. And the industry players that have spent so much time, energy, resources, that have been dogged about ensuring that this sector does not collapse, need to be commended, need to be supported.
You said we should continue to knock on the door of the CTG sector.
Yes.
And my question would be, this knock, would it ever lead to the door being opened? Because so much has been spent so far in trying to revitalize the sector. But like from what you've said and what we can see, not much progress has been made. Is it that investment has been in the wrong places? Or you think that the investment has not been channeled on what actually can bring back the sector alive?
Well, like I said to you, that the intervention needs to be a value chain intervention. You cannot leave one part of the CTG sector untouched.
What has been the focus by previous administration? What has been the focus?
Well, for instance, I can tell you that one of the interventions, which was 100 billion naira that was set aside for the CTG sector when it was initiated, it talked about the textile, it talked about the generics, the processors, but it never talked about the farmers that are producers of the raw material, which is a bedrock resource for the CTG sector. So I think that, again, like I said, if you look at the attendant benefits of the CTG sector, and you can check across the world. If you look at Bangladesh, for instance, they are doing over $38 billion. They have a textile ministry. If you look at India, likewise. So the point I'm making is that it must be a deliberate intervention. It is not a sector that you think that whatever you put in is wasted. We are currently doing over $6 billion of import of textile products that we can generally produce, and we have the infrastructure to produce. Doesn't make sense. And like I said, the job creation potentials of it, the wealth creation potentials of it, this is a sector that needs to be deliberate. And I keep advising, where I have the opportunity, that we look at what we have that has a wide value chain that engage numerous Nigerians. If you look at rubber, for instance, I'm crossing, yes, rubber, you look at palm, and you look at cotton. These are 3 critical crops, commodity crops that if we concentrate on them, you will revolutionize industry or industrialization in Nigeria. So, and of course, these things, like I said, you must sustain it. You can't, you know, I always say that if, as a parent, you have a child that is in school and the child doesn't do well in his or her exams, it would be unfair for you as a parent to withdraw him and say, you know, you don't have a second chance to go for a repeat exam and so on and so forth. So it's a critical sector, and I think that government has identified that, and that is what we must work on and ensure that we bring everybody on board. We create the synergy that is required in the sector to enable it to give the results that we're expecting.
No doubt it is a critical sector that government is concerned about. Yeah. Let's bring in the SSA to the president. I know you've been listening to the other contribution from our other guests, but I actually still wanted to let us establish what exactly went wrong, you know, since 1997, you know, just like we said earlier, that we had a booming, you know, textile and cotton and garment industry. But all of a sudden, they just faded out like that, especially in Lagos and also in Kano, Kaduna and all that. What exactly was the problem? How did we get to where we are now before we now look at the effort of government to revive the industry?
Good morning, Nigerians, and good morning, and thank you for having me again. I think this will be the third time I've been here to talk about the rebuilding and revitalization of Nigerian cotton, textile and garment industry. I call it reshoring, because the problem was outsourcing, importation, dependence on imported commodities.
Okay.
So that's totally because it was functioning, was at its maximum capacity. It started, the downward spiral started by lack of investment on the very basic foundation of the industry, which is farming. We stopped investing in the development of new seed varieties. The Samcots were the last Samcots, 20-something, the last, and that was in 1988, the last variety released. So, secondly, like he talked about, the WTO framework, we weren't, you know, prepared to withstand the pressure from highly productive countries, high population, like China, like Vietnam, like India. They saw Nigeria as the largest market in Africa, and then the projection of growth was tilted towards Africa. And because 1 in every black man is in Nigeria, Nigeria is a high income society relative to other African nations. So when you have these twin factors of high income because of the massive natural resources, export base, and then the high population, it definitely would be a target market. So India, China, Vietnam, they all targeted, and you and I know, they have longer history than us. China has more than 5,000 years history. So the economy of China was bigger, the labor force higher than ours when they joined WTO and all this. But let's not dwell on the past. The interest should be the future. What is government doing? If you look at Bangladesh, I will not use China now. I will use other countries of similar socioeconomic dynamics like Nigeria, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia. What have they done? They have followed a similar trajectory. 1, setting up a high-level ministerial committee, which is what Mr. Anibe, he has been pushing, and with our help, we told him that, look, we need the complete buy-in of the national and the subnational. The national, the president is very much in tune, supportive of every framework, every policy drive to revive, to rebuild and revitalize this all-important sector. But we needed the buy-in of the states because the land belongs to the states. And you cannot start the process of rebuilding and revitalization of the sector without talking at the very basic foundation. I will give you an instance. In Bangladesh, they started with this high-level ministerial committee. Then they have the advisory committee made up of government and the private sector. Then they talked about the raw materials, resource allocation for the cultivation of cotton and also provision of high-yielding and drought and disease-resistant cotton varieties. Then they talked about access to raw materials, other raw materials, chemicals, dyes that cannot be produced there. Then you moved further. The fiscal policy, tax exemptions, tax holidays, concessions, rapid depreciation of assets and writing off debts, infrastructural provision. This is the only government in this country that has followed through on that. The Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zone. It has the phase 1 has 8 states. In fact, we've just commissioned the foundation laying ceremony in Kaduna and in Cross River. We'll be moving to Oyo, to Imo, to FCT, to Kano. And then the second phase, Mr. Vice President went to the Iowa Des Moines, and we had a very productive meeting with the president of African Development Bank that's indicating another $1 billion loan, but they have increased the envelope to around $2.something billion to spread across the special agro-industrial processing zone across additional 24 states in the federation, making it 32 states, including FCT.
Okay.
So that's the infrastructural provision. Beyond that, you move ahead, the Textile Development Fund. I'm giving you sequential policy dynamics that led to the miracle of Bangladesh CTG sector. So the Cotton Textile Development Fund, that is what the CTG board that you presented, and their prayers were all granted with the support of the Vice President, who is the chairman of the National Economic Council, 100%. And he wouldn't have given you the support without the buy-in, the total support, the propping of Mr. President that this has to be delivered. Secondly, after that, you now look at the trade factors. Back-to-back LC. This is where the central bank, together with the customs, with the Nigerian post authorities, will step into work. The bonded warehousing system. All the different trade instruments that government is planning to deliver on to make sure we revive this sector. And let me tell you something that is very unique. This is once in a lifetime opportunity for us to revive the sector. I will give you an instance. Chinese export of cotton, textile, garment, apparel was more than 300 billion in 2024. But the total exports to US of garments and its accessories is $159 billion. Bangladesh exports of apparel alone to US is $9.7 billion. Vietnam exports is $17.5 billion. What is the current tariff regime under Trump? Vietnam, 46%. Exports of apparel, I'm not talking about the associated, because when you put the associated, it's more than 25. But let's just stick on the apparel alone, 17.5. Tariff is 46%. What of Bangladesh? 37. What is the export of apparel alone? $9.7 billion. The combined total of this is more than a quarter of just the apparel, because I'm talking of the apparel alone. Apparel is $110 billion. But when you put the accessories, it's more than $200 billion. It's the largest market. And more than 70% of the imports in the US are from these high tariff countries. Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, China. China 34. So we are sitting, even the Nigerian private sectors, investors, listening to me now. This is the golden era for us to revive this sector, create jobs, bring in FX. You can imagine if Nigeria can just tap into 10% of this. It's additional $10 billion. At the current exchange rate is trillions, more than 10 trillion naira. And you know the number of Nigerians that will be employed directly and indirectly, the total socioeconomic revitalization of our farming communities, of Kanu, of Katsina, of Aba, of Lagos, of Kanu, all this Ibadan, all these major CTG clusters in the country will all benefit. And the good thing is that all these states I've mentioned, they have keyed into the laudable program of the federal government, the special agro-industrial processing zone. And we are redesigning it to make special provision for the infrastructural requirement of this very all-important sector, so that we will present it as infrastructural benchmark for the potential investors, the Chinese investors, the Walmarts, the Vietnamese investors, because it's now become very difficult for them to compete within the American market at the current tariff regime instituted by President Trump. So, Mr. President, who is a technocrat, a politician, a businessman, a man of bold ideas, had seen this very big once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to drive our FS earning, diversify our economy, provide jobs for our teeming youth, recatalyze the livelihood of our people in the rural communities, in the farming communities, has keyed into that. That is why he has mandated us to look into ways to see that now that the opportunity had presented itself, we key into it, we tap into it, we utilize it, we exploit it, we make it to the benefit of this
Thank
country.
you very much, Dr. Uzoma. We agree with you. Of course, this is a very key sector. And, you know, there's no point going very far quoting countries like China and the rest. Right here in Africa, we have examples that Nigeria can take a cue from. Ethiopia, Mauritius is there, Morocco, South Africa, and of course, you want to also mention Egypt. Now, from all that you have said and listening to Dr. Achimogu, I'm thinking, what makes you confident that all of this is not just talk, it will actually materialize to the revitalization of the sector if the power sector is not fixed?
Well, I can tell you, you just mentioned faraway countries. We have our neighbor here, Benin Republic. The Arise Integrated Industrial Platform, they have a CTG hub in an EPS, Export Processing Zone. Mr. Vice President has gotten the approval of Mr. President to go. We have been interfacing with the leadership. Mr. Soren had been coming to office, looking at a different policy framework to make it easy for them to also set up, because they had seen the opportunity, not even export, the internal consumption. And this was prior to the Trump tariff that had put all these major CTG countries at a huge disadvantage. Nigeria tariff is 14%. Labor cost is lower. And also electricity tariff is cheaper in Nigeria than in all these countries. Very cheap. If I show you the chart, Nigeria is at the top. But the problem is now, the Arise IPP platform, their EPZ in Benin Republic, they are building and about to commission a 100 megawatt solar power plant to power the entire activities within the EPZ, and also to give other companies that have rented space within that zone, provide them with cheap, free, renewable energy, and also push the country at the forefront of getting carbon credits. So Nigeria, in terms of solar radiation profile, Nigeria sits as a much stronger because of the less humidity here. So, and they are ready to do that. So we should stop dwelling on the challenges. What are the levers? The gaps, the levers. The gap, you think, is power. The lever is there. Now, solar energy is now price competitive with fossil fuel energy. And Nigeria is sitting at the solar belt, solar profile that is comparable to no other country on planet Earth. So we have to leverage that. power the entire SAPZ and the CTG sub-component that are going to be housed within the SAPZ. And that is why the SAPZ is providing infrastructure. And one of the critical infrastructure, roads, power, security. That's what that facility from African Development Bank is meant to do. And it is government's own duty to interface, to do the complete value chain mapping and identify the key actors and players within Nigeria and within the US market. I'm not even talking about the European market, because the European market, and again, logistics distance between Nigeria and the North America is closer. So the shipping cost, the logistic cost is lesser. Then Europe is also the second largest consumer market for these products. Nigeria, you have the GSP, Generalized Scheme of Preferences. Nigeria is currently on the GSP standard, but we are working to pivot Nigeria into GSP Plus, where there is zero tariff to European markets for all CTG products. So if we get that, we also have very short window, shipping distance from Nigeria to Europe, which is way cost competitive relative to the Asian market. Again, the EPA, European Partnership Agreement, the president had instructed our trade negotiators from the Foreign Affairs, from the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, from the Central Bank to see that we finalize together, because that also gives us zero tariff exports to the European market. And let me tell you, because China is a geopolitical competitor to the European Union, the likelihood of them being comfortable to import from Nigeria is very maximized with this current, because China, the lack of access with the current 245% tariff now, it started from 34 to 245, so it's completely shut out of the US market. They will look for where to dump it. That is why it's important that you have a very tech savvy, business oriented, with maximum operational knowledge of how business works, both in the accounting and the banking. Remember, the president is an accountant, the vice president is a banker. So you have very perfect marriage.
Dr. Osama,
that will take advantage of this tariff to displace and replace some of the exports in this major market, the US, and also take advantage of the GSP Plus, Generalized Scheme of Preferences, in the European market, and also round up agreements under the European Partnership Agreement, EPA, so that we have maximized multi-diversified market for our CTG while we are trying to develop it, so that we don't just develop it and don't have the market.
Very well said. Very well said, Dr. Ozama. In trying to answer the question, of course, you talked about, the benefits in reviving the sector. It's not like we're dwelling on the challenges, but we must talk about the issues that have led to this sector, going down in the first place. Because if you don't solve some of these challenges, of course, you can't get it to boom. You already tried to deal with the power sector by talking about solar and all of that. But let's talk about the farmers, because that's also another critical aspect Dr. Achimogu raised. That's been a major challenge. How do you intend, to get those farmers, to go back, to the farms and get optimum yield, considering, you already mentioned that, security being a challenge at the moment?
Well, I've always been of this view. In Nigeria, we keep on talking about security. The mantra should be productivity enhancement. I will give you an instance. The Samcot varieties you have will give you barely 250 to 300 kilograms per hectare. But the new variety, Mexico, BT, cotton, is GMO cotton, will give you close to 2 tons. So it means that farming 1 hectare with this improved variety, BT cotton, is equivalent to 10 hectares of the outdated, because varietal improvement is not what happens in 1 year, 2 years. The lifespan of Mr. President's administration will be 8 years, and it's not enough to even develop a variety. So while would you just rely on that, while you're, empowering the research community to go ahead to begin to work on varietal improvement, the IAR, Zaria, has been under mandate to do that. The National Biotechnology Development, NABDA, is also working on that. But we have to leverage or the already existing listing. That is why the interface and engagement with the developers of these varieties are there. And federal government is working on how to bring them, getting the necessary phytosanitary approvals to bring them in. So when you bring in this thing, if you want 1 million tons with the SAMCOT, you will need nearly 5 million hectares. But that 1 million ton with this one, you need around 500,000 hectares. So you will now find, I'm not saying that that's why I say we should stop emphasizing on the problem. Yes, the problem is there. You don't pursue the problem alone. You have to use, multi-dimensional, two-pronged approach. While you try to bring the security situation under control, you also try to leverage technology to make sure that you offset the losses as a result of the technology, as a result of the insecurity in the interim. And for the foreseeable future. So that while you still have very limited area accessible, that limited area accessible with improved technology will even give you 4 to 5 times more than what you would have gotten if the insecurity is not there. That is why the president is taking a two-pronged approach to tackling this problem, not only for cotton, but for all other crop varieties, even for the livestock. Our current animal breeds with during dry season barely produces 1 liters per day, but let's be very generous to give it 1.5 liters. But you also have other varieties, other breeds of cattle. Girilando, a cross between the Frisian and the Waiful and the Zebu, developed them, but it took them 50 years to get all the genetic markers and indicators to the level they wanted. It gets an average 26 liters a day, and Max had the world record of 124 liters per day. So we are not like saying, okay, we must rely, the president, that's why he created the Ministry of Livestock. We will not say, oh, we must rely to take 20, 50 years to develop our cattle varieties and also the insecurity that is inherent within the sector. He is taking a bold idea, bold step, trying to develop the national breeding listing so that you work two-pronged approach. While you try to curb the insecurity, the nomadism, you also try to enhance it with technology that has already been done, paid for and spent by other countries, moving them together so you work harmoniously with a bold vision in the interim. That's short term, mid term, and long term. In the mid term, in the short term, is bringing in these improved varieties, BT cotton, trying to mainstream them, trying to engage with our farmers and let them know of the right agronomic practices to grow them, because it's completely different from others. And in the short term, mid term, long term, working harmoniously with the security agencies, with the state government, with the religious institutions, with traditional institutions to enhance and improve security situation within the farming community. So at the end of the day, everybody will be happy.
Now time to get to our guest in our Kano studio. I hope the connection is much better. Alhaji Seidu Datajo Adama, if you can hear me, as we begin to round up the conversation, I'd like you to speak to us about the kind of policies you like to see government, come up with that would, help all this, in seeing that the CTG sector actually comes back up on stream.
Quickly and briefly, one of the major policies we would appeal and advocate to the government is to make sure that Nigerian textile industry have a minimum of 30% market share in the first 3-5 years. Whatever we will do to make sure that our Nigerian market is for Nigerian industries. It doesn't help government to stop crime. It doesn't help government to create peace. It doesn't help government if you allow your borders open, if you allow to import everything. Surely we cannot employ people with some conditions of IMF. Allowing everything to be dumped in Nigerian soil is wrong. Kindly, please, kindly sit down with IMF. What can we do to reduce importation of even sometimes substandard textile fabric? Sometimes if you go to Kori market in Kano, you will see ordinary plastic sheet, they call it textile. Braba, they call it textile. And people buy it, and it affects their health. It affects the health of the skin. Medical doctors always complain. And our local people in the rural areas complain about, but it is very cheap, affordable to them. Make us produce affordable textile material made of 100% Nigerian cotton from Nigerian farmers, and make new policies that will encourage markets, traders to sell Nigerian products. Make it a bit difficult for people to just import like that. Make it mandatory to pay that levy. That levy we're talking about, textile development levy. Continue to collect it, reduce the importation by whatever technicalities, and then flood the money into the textile and CTG. Plot the money. Reduce the burden of present textile mills by using that fund. The fund is made to reduce the burden, to cushion the negative effect. Use it, stop the loan, pay off the loan with that fund. Then we start afresh. We are comfortable, or will be comfortable, with the conditions of employment, with the conditions of using locally raw material, locally sourced raw material like cotton. We can still use our people. I have said it in the past that the Nigerians, 100,000 Nigerians, present administration has so far trained as at last December, just some 4 months ago, are yet to be employed. Who will employ them? We, the Nigerian industries, are supposed to employ them. They cannot be self-reliant for now. So kindly float that money so that we can engage these idle, trained youth. I was opportune to train over 200. 2 weeks ago, ITF revisited our industry. They inspected the expansion of training center. We are now going to the second level of training. How can we continue training these youths without engaging them? And the money to do that is there available. So it's only the implementation of the policies sometimes that delays. The implementation should be speedy. I agree with the special advisor. Excuse me, I'm a bit coughing. I agree with the suggestion of the special advisor that high-level technical committee or whatever committee be involved. If we can have a very high-level committee that will be supervising the whole training program under ITF, that will be injected into the system of textile, cotton and garment, especially textile, with the employees of labor directly. Kindly make that kind of committee with some small subcommittees that will be going around to see what do we have on ground. The situation is we talk mostly on paper. We invite the authorities to please come and visit our industries. See it by yourself. Can we be revived? Even the question is, can we be revived? We are sure we have the potentials. We can be revived. Do we have the market? Yes, we have the market. What next? Do we have the money? Yes, there is the money. Do we need to do it? There is the political will to do it. The problem is the implementation.
Now, Chief Achimogo, I want you to also, maybe you just need to just highlight, the immediate steps that you think, government should take, to kickstart the industry.
Well, thank you. I think the immediate step has been taken, and which is just like Doctor has mentioned, and I think is in the news already, that the government, the NEC, which is involving the subnationals, which is key, have approved the establishment of a cotton, textile and garment development board. And our idea behind it is to streamline, is to bring under one umbrella, one roof, all issues pertaining to the CTG sector. And that we also advocated for that board to be private sector driven, meaning industry players driven. There, we wear the shoe, we know where it pinches. Okay. Of course, we can't do it without government. So government must also be part of it. And I think that a lot is going to be done, a lot will be achieved through this umbrella. Because we now finally say we have a seat on the table and we can basically contribute to the direction of where the sector is going.
Okay, maybe.
Thank you all for the, I can see one uniform recurring destiny
Yes.
security. I never say security is not a problem, but however, you cannot say because there is insecurity today and other things you will do to enhance production, you will not do that. If we have both productivity enhancement and the security, perfect 100% situation. But while you continue to, work to tackle the insecurity, which had been there before this administration. Mm-hmm. So you also have to work on other things that you used to offset. The losses from, area expansion can also be, recovered with productivity enhancement. I will give you an instance. If you have 1 million hectares of maize in Nigeria, where the average farmer's field is 1.5, but let's be very generous, give 2 tons. And then you have another 500,000 hectares where you have productivity enhancement. So 2 tons times 1 million is 2 million tons. And then you have 500,000 hectares where you are getting 6 tons. It's 3 million. If you have another 500,000 hectares or 250,000 hectares, which is 250,000, but you are getting 8 tons, it's 2 million. So while you are working to enhance security, you should also work to enhance this other side of the factor, which is productivity enhancement. That is why the president, in other administration, the focus had always been on tackling the insecurity. But the president is taking a bold step, 2-pronged approach, tackling the insecurity and putting all the factors that will enhance productivity. That leads me to the second factor. The other factors to enhance productivity. You talked about Samcot. Why Samcot may not be? Because when Samcot was developed, the climatic conditions that it was, the genes were adaptable to, had already changed. So that is why no matter what you do, you will not be able to get that enhanced productivity. Remember that time we don't have in-season drought. For the past 5 years, we've been having back-to-back in-season drought. That is why government is investing huge amount of money under the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund for the first time.
All right.
Irrigation. Just give me 1 minute. Irrigation.
It looks like we're going to have part 2 of this program because we're out of time today.
Let me finish. Just irrigation is a component that is required. That is the major problem that is driving down productivity in Nigeria is in-season drought. So federal government is investing massively on irrigation under the Irrigate Nigerian project, under the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund, and then mechanization. This has been in the works for the past 10 years. The Green Imperative Project, it has been approved. So it is the approach of government, integrated capital, non-financial support, grants,
thank you,
loan guarantees, loans and investment. Government can only provide grants. You have 5 components in the integrated capital.
Dr. Asuma, we're going to
you take advantage of that loan to get these harvesters. Government cannot provide harvesters to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to have part 2 of this program because it looks like you have not exhausted all that you need to let us know about the CTG sector. Many thanks, Dr. Kingsley Uzoma, my associate to the President on Agribusiness and Productivity Enhancement. It was a pleasure to have you. And of course, part 2, you will be here. Also, would like to appreciate Chief Anibe Achimogo. Yes, PhD, DRA. Agbegba Aje of Iwoye. Ketuland, Ogun State.
There is no PhD in my name.
Okay, but there's no PhD. Oh, wow, no, great. No PhD, President, National Cotton Association of Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us. So your PhD is waiting.
Yes, waiting.
So you need to go and get it.
Practical
of course, we also like to appreciate Seidu Datijo Adama, Chairman Adama Textiles and Garment Industries. Thank you so much, sir, for being our guest. We appreciate you. So that's the much time will permit us today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ian Ray John, Level Arts on NTA.
And I'm Ademola. You do have a wonderful day.